Okay, so we're recording. This is Andrian from Beautiful Brain Collective. I am a mental health blogger, community builder, and mental health recovery advocate. And today we're having morning tea with Shenika Johnson, right?
Yep.
And your Instagram is What's Wrong with Shenika, right?
Right.
You are a vlogger, mental health advocate, and parent, spouse, and yeah. And you are very passionate about mental health awareness. So, we're going to be talking to each other today about accepting your illness. So, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and generalized anxiety disorder back in, I would say, 4 years ago. I don't know, like 2014, something like that. So, and then, feel free to chime in and just give your your spiel. When were you diagnosed? What were you diagnosed with? I know you told me, but let's hear it from you.
Um, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2
Okay.
in 14, and along with adult ADD and PTSD as well.
Okay.
In 2014 had to have been the worst year ever. I had a lot of personal things going on. My relationship was failing. My family wasn't speaking to me, and um, I hit a really low point, and I came home from work. Well, right before I came home from work, I worked at a hospital, and all my team on my floor, they all gathered around me at the end of our shift and was like, "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but you need some help." They pulled in my uniform and like, your uniform is hanging off of you. You don't know what's going on. You're not your normal happy self. So you need to go do something about that. And that same day, I went home. I don't know what I did when I got home. I got right back out. I got in my car, and the street that I was driving on was riddled with potholes, and I think the speed limit was like 25, and I was doing 80. I almost crashed my car.
Wow.
Um, at that point, somewhere in my mind, I said, okay, you know what? This this isn't working out too well. Like, I spent a lot of time the weeks prior crying, wasn't eating. I couldn't keep anything down. I was in a bad space. So I turned myself into the emergency room, and I told them I thought I was a harm to myself. They had a psychologist come in and see me and ask me different questions. And by the end of the night, they offered the option for me to go to a mood clinic, and it was voluntary. But once you signed the paper saying that you were going, it was no longer voluntary. They kept you.
Okay.
And it was the middle of the night when I went, and it was the scariest thing ever because everyone was sleeping, but I was on this gurney. When they transferred me through ambulance, I was on a gurney. They rolled me into this place in the middle of the night. I had no clue what was going on. No one really explained to me what was going to happen. And they ended up putting me in a room with another individual who had a lot of different battles of her own.
Mhm.
But that experience was some of the worst and the best of my life. I learned a lot, but I believe last week, I can't remember her name, um, but she spoke about her experience and how you're not allowed to have any electronics, no cell phone, anything like that. They had couches and TV that we could watch, but we had very limited time where we can watch TV. They kind of filled our days up with different activities. They had different people who would come in at different times of the day. Did arts and crafts. We had support groups. Um,
How long were you there?
5 days.
Okay, because you saw the video that I did last week with Christine
Yeah.
from Pepper Vintage, and she kind of mentioned a similar situation.
Yeah, it was. I think hers might have been a little nicer.
Oh, okay, because I remember her saying arts and crafts, and I know she mentioned that that was like one of her favorite like parts of like being there was the arts and crafts and stuff like that. So we kept your time like it was like scheduled.
It was pretty much the same where I was at. I know she mentioned that she would return. I don't think I would go back to mine. I think
Okay.
I would search for one that has a. It was scary, and I think for a lot of people who's doing this the first time, I think my fear with that particular place is that it will run people away from wanting to get help because it was scary. And you had a large variety of people with various different issues, but some of them were a lot more severe. And when you're coming into that for the first time, you don't know what you're looking at, and you're looking like, "Oh my God, these people are crazy. Where am I at?" Because that's how I felt, because I didn't know. And a lot of people coming off the street who are acknowledging the fact that they have different mental health disorders, or even that you're just not yourself at the moment, that can be scary and it can turn you away. But I am glad that I did it. Um, I did an outpatient group afterwards for like a month. Every day I would go for 2 hours, I believe, and it would be a group of people that we would meet with, same people every day, and we would just sit and talk different topics. People would update on how they were doing, their home life, they were managing with whatever different disorders that they had. That was my favorite part because I got to see firsthand people functioning with the different things that they had going on, and that was more encouraging to me than being in on the floor with a bunch of people who were at their worst. But these
Right.
people, every
Right.
day they came, they were brave enough to get up, to come to this outpatient group, to speak in front of a bunch of people they didn't know. And it was very inspiring to me. And I think that stuck, even though I wasn't quite ready to fully accept where I was at the time, it stuck with me in the years coming. And I remembered that when I decided to start speaking out about it. Like I remember those same people.
So is that the point where they like diagnosed you like during that time?
Um, they touched on it when I was at the mood clinic. I followed up with a psychiatrist afterwards, but during that time, I think they were just experimenting, trying to figure out what would work. And I remember in particular, they gave me some Ativan. I had never had anything like this before. And I was the newbie, I guess, on the floor. So some of the people that I was with that I started talking to, this was a vacation for them, and they gave me the Ativan, and everyone sat around waiting to see how I was gonna act on the Ativan, and they were
Who's
just
the new
laughing.
girl? What's gonna happen to her? Like they were just
That
like waiting to see like
entertainment for them, and it was entertainment. They took me. One of the other residents there, it took me to the bathroom and showed me myself in the mirror, and my eyes looked like saucers on my face. And I had lost maybe about 25, 30 pounds. So I was rail thin. So all you saw were these big eyes and nothing else. And I was jumpy. I was all over the place. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think this is for me. But once I left, I set up an appointment with a therapist and with a psychiatrist. And that's between the two of them, that's where they came up with that and going over my history and my behavior over, especially in my early 20s. That's how they were able to come to that conclusion. And it's been pretty consistent since with each new person that I have seen. Because I have seen more people than I'd like. But sometimes it's a little difficult to find someone that you like. It feels good. They give you what you need, because everybody doesn't need the same thing.
right.
My very first psychiatrist, I loved her. She seemed more like a therapist, really. But she stopped working where I was going, and she moved out of state completely. I didn't even know.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
I had
I feel
labs.
like that's like so traumatic. Like when you finally find somebody like that you mesh well with, like a mental health provider, and then like they move, like you said, or like they stop taking your insurance, it's like so traumatic. Like then to have to start the process over again, it's like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? Like I need to find somebody, but not everybody is gonna be right for you.
Right. And that was one of the hardest things for me, because what you said, having to revisit everything all over again. And I
You
had to do
are
that.
absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct because you have to, like you said, you have to revisit everything. You have to go through your history all over again. Then on top of that, then you have to decide whether that person, like, is it gonna fit? Like, is it a good fit? So it's kind of like dating.
Yeah.
Finding a therapist is like dating. Like you go out on these dates with these people, you see if you like them, then you may like them or you may not like them, and that's what I feel like it's like dating.
That could be discouraging for a lot of people. It was discouraging for me. I would go almost a year sometimes without seeing anybody because I didn't want to go through that again. It was just daunting, exhausting to think about. You got to sit through this, talk to this person, then you got to start a new regimen as far as your medication all over again. And you have different doctors who have different opinions as to what you should take. It can be a lot, and it took a lot of strength to say, hey, this is what I need to do. So
Right.
I keep going through this until I get to a point to where I am where I want to be. And that takes a lot. And I completely understand people who don't want to do that all over again. It takes a lot out of you. You have to really want to be well and find some inner God given strength to do it because it's a lot.
You are absolutely correct. So, I know we were kind of talking about accepting the fact that you have an illness, and I think accepting the fact that you have an illness is one of the key like components of even trying to get well, because if you don't accept it, then it's really not going to help. So like, how did you, there's like, do you feel like a weird echo or something?
Yeah, I hear like a little crunchy kind of.
It does sound like a little crunch. It does sound like a little crunching, like crunch, 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 crunch. But anyway, when did you get to the point where you felt like you were okay, like with your?
Just last year. Um, I spent a lot, I'd say the first 3 years, I guess, because I was diagnosed in 2014. It took me about 3 years to get to that point. And I think my biggest issue was that I tried so hard, and I still try, not to be like my parents, because even though neither one of my parents never did receive a diagnosis, I I I'm pretty sure a lot of this stuff is hereditary. You got to get it from somewhere, and I'm pretty sure both of my parents had separate things going on with them. And my father is no longer alive, but my mom is, and I've been trying to push for her to go get the help that she needs because I see a lot of her behaviors in me.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest thing. Like, I don't want to be like my parents. I'm not like them. They're crazy. They got different stuff going on. That's not me. I'm not them. I don't do these things. I don't participate in that. And I made it about them for so long that I forgot that this is me. Like, I'm not my parents, and I have children of my own. At that time, when I got diagnosed, I only had one child. As of last year, I had three, and I started to notice the behavior geared towards my children. My oldest, I started seeing different things in her, and it was kind of a wake up for me. Like, you know what? I need to stop. At some point, even though your childhood, your past experiences definitely define a part of who you are, at some point you got to draw the line and say, you know what, I'm going to stop being a victim I'm going to stop blaming whoever for why things happen, why I am the way that I am. Now it's time for me to take charge. And my kids really helped me do that, because my biggest fear has always been being a bad parent, because my parents, because of the different struggles that they had in their upbringing, did the best that they could, but their best wasn't that great.
Right.
And because of that, I have always been so scared that I'm not going to love my kids enough. I'm not going to give them enough affection. I'm not going to provide them with opportunities. If they come home and they're telling me that they got different things going on, I need to address this the right way. It's a constant battle to this day. But that is what pushed me over the edge. And I don't know how that will work with people who don't have kids or who need to use themselves as a reason. I started looking at myself in the mirror like, this isn't okay. Something is wrong. And it started to affect my relationships with my husband specifically. Because even even after my diagnosis, I still would participate in pretty questionable, my behavior was questionable just with some of the things that I would do.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I think it was rebellion,
Mm-hmm.
because I was doing exactly what my therapist and exactly what my psychiatrist would say that was typical of someone like me. And I didn't see that. Like, I don't know what they're talking about. I ain't crazy.
Right.
But some of those things almost cost me my life.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, my kids and me just wanting to live was what brought me through. Like, I faced death closely too many times, and I had to realize I really don't want to die. And some people feel like they're so low that they do. But for me, it was never I wanted to die. It was more so I just don't want this life. I want a new life. I want to be able to start over.
Absolutely.
You don't get a new life. This is
Right.
one that you have, and you have to learn to make the best of it. But for me, it was support from my husband. It was me having my kids, and deep down just wanting to be the best parent that I could be. And once I started focusing on being the best parent, it made me feel a little better. Then I was able to focus on being the best spouse, and that made me feel a little better. And then it came to a point to where I wanted to be the best me.
Right.
Because then once I started doing that, my life became about my kids and my husband. And that's great, but you need something for you.
Right.
And I still struggle with that. But that was one of the things that pushed me towards doing this is something I'm doing, and it's for me. It has nothing to do with my kids. It has nothing to do with my husband, my family, his family.
We are so in the same. We are so in the same boat because, you know, I mean, I feel like you just described like me to a T just now when you were just talking, because for years I was in a long-term relationship, and I have a 20-year-old son, and it was all about, raising my son, making sure that he was okay, um and then kind of like being in this relationship and being a good partner or whatever, and then losing out on myself, missing out on the things that I wanted to do, losing me. And then when you get caught up in that, then you got this illness that you got to deal with. And then you just like kind of like you just lost in all of that, like trying to keep up with everybody else's stuff. You just get lost, like you get lost. So then once I started like refocusing on what I wanted to do and my wellness and my health, that's when I started seeing a big shift. And this mental health awareness is totally about me and totally about helping people. And it's like, that's where the purpose came in at. So I totally, totally, totally understand you. Like, you couldn't have said it better, because I felt like you were just like describing me.
I think that's a lot not just women, men too. You got some single men, some single parents out there,
Right.
or men, or even if you're not parent, and it's hard to get to a point to where you say this has to be about me. Some people never find their way there because you're so used to being a people pleaser. You're so used to wanting to be best for everyone else. But at the beginning of every sentence, it starts with you. You want to be the best wife, the best mother, the best friend, the best daughter. It all starts with you. And we forget you.
Right.
And I started doing little simple things. Like I would record myself, or I would take pictures, and I would look at where I had fallen to, and I would be like, oh my God, I look like this? This is how I carry myself.
Right.
I would leave the house, my hair wouldn't be done, I'd have t-shirts on that had stains and holes in them. I just stopped caring.
Right.
And that's not who I am. Like, if you talk to my mom and my sisters and everyone who knew me years ago, long before any of this took a place in my life, or so I thought, I was Miss Diva. You know, I was the senior in high school who was always violating dress code because I had my mini skirts on and stiletto heels inside the hallways. That was me. I cared about how I looked and how I carried myself. So for me to see face to face where I had become, it was sad. So
Right.
even though I didn't really have much energy, I didn't like it. I didn't like what I saw. So I
Right.
started doing little simple things, like I would paint my nails.
Mm-hmm.
And then once painting my nails started becoming a regular thing, I would wash my hair. And even if it meant doing something like this and just wrapping it up, it
Right.
wasn't all over my head, looked like a bird's nest.
Right.
um,
Exactly.
little
Exactly.
bits of things, little bit at a time. It started to make me feel better, and it sent the message that, hey, I can get control of this. I can get on top of this. This is a part of who I am, but this isn't who I am. It's just a small part. I can still have self-esteem. I can still look good about myself. I can still be a mother. I can still be a wife. I'm just gonna have to get on top of this. I'm gonna have to take my medication. I'm gonna have to go to therapy. And that was a whole nother thing in itself. I used to pretend to take my medication and flush it down the toilet because I would rebel. Like, I don't need this. And then because of that, I was just like a whole lot of other people. I would take it until I felt better and stop. And then I would crash and burn.
I think that I can't say everybody, but I think that probably people have had that experience, because I know I had that experience. Once I'd be on a roll of like feeling better, I would just be like, oh, I don't need my medication. Oh, I don't need to go to therapy. I'm good. And then, I would go back down, like, down the rabbit hole or whatever. But I was gonna say that about accepting the diagnosis. It's like, for me, I was like in denial because to I didn't want the diagnosis to diminish any of the other accomplishments that I had made. So it's like, I graduated from college, you know, with a 3.8 GPA. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
After being a teenage mother. So I didn't want for people to just look at me like, oh, she's crazy. Forget all the other stuff that I had done. Forget the fact that I worked in one of the biggest modeling agencies in New York City, and I had done a lot of like really good things. I didn't want that to become the focus. I didn't want to be labeled and just to be called something just because there's such a negative association with people who have mental health disorders. And so that's why I was in denial for so long, because I didn't want to be this labeled.
Well, for me, as far as other people and how they viewed me, my story wasn't quite the same.
Mm-hmm.
the few people that I did know that I entrusted this information with back in the beginning, everyone pretty much had the same response. Like, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. This isn't that. They're just telling you this. They're just trying to push pills on you. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to suck it up. And that unfortunately sunk in for quite some time. And that was part of my rebellion. Like, they're right. I don't need any of this. I'm just being overly dramatic. I had a bad patch in my life. I allowed those people to define me. I allowed those people to tell me what I deep down knew what was going on with myself wasn't going on, because I was so afraid of making these people feel uncomfortable or upsetting them, because it seemed like the more I would try and argue that or say, you know what, I think this is really something, they would get angry. Like, y'all don't know what you're talking about. I don't know why you keep trying to push this. And that was dangerous for me, because that was a point in my time where I cared about how I made other people feel. Everything was about everybody else. And at the end of the day, it's not them who's laying on the hospital gurney. It's not them who doesn't have the energy to get up and go take a shower. It's not them who flips out on their kids because they're just being kids, or, spends $500 on something that you don't even know what the heck you just spent it on. It's not them going through that. They can tell you all that they want, what they think is going on with you, but it's not them that's going through it, and they're not suffering from the consequences behind the choices that you make because of what it is that you have and it not being properly treated. So it took me a long time to see that, but once again, me looking at my kids, that really that really gave me a grip. Like, okay, I don't want to continue this cycle. I don't want my kids to suffer because I didn't get the help that I needed. Because even when my dad was still alive and I would try and talk to him after I started to accept what it was that was going on with me, like, hey, Dad, if you ever thought about seeing somebody, maybe you should do this, maybe you should change that up, maybe you should go on walks. Some of the stuff I told him sounded pretty lame, but I just wanted him to get help, and he didn't. And I always carry this weight with me, because I feel like if I had to try harder, if I had to push more, if I had spent less time being angry with him because of the things that he would do, because there was obviously an issue,
Right.
I may have been able to make a difference, or I may not have. I'll never know now. But his choices, coupled with different health issues, which were a result of some of his choices, it eventually he just couldn't deal with it anymore. And I had to be the one to make the call, quality of life decision. And it was hard.
Wow.
And since then, that was one of the main things that had fueled me to start pushing for this, because you never know who it is in your life that is suffering from something. And maybe you could be the person to help them push through that, or inspire them to go get some help. Because people from my dad's generation, my mom's generation, my grandparents, it wasn't that they just didn't believe in that, but in our particular group, I'm not saying it's not the case for other ethnic groups, but in ours, we weren't educated about that. We
No.
we didn't have the resources. We didn't have people sitting down and talking to us about our mind being okay. We always had to be survivors. So
Exactly.
there was no talk about, well, you need to take care of your mind. It was more so, you need to suck it up. You need to do this so you can get through the day. You got to do this to support your kids. You got to do this to keep the lights on. There was no, oh, well, maybe you should go see a therapist and talk about your life. They didn't know anything about that. So there was no education to push on to further generations. And that was my dad's case. And I felt like I have to be the person to cut that and start something new.
Absolutely. 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 I think that you hit the nail right on the head, because even when I talk to some people in my family, and even people that are not in my family, they're still kind of like, they don't know or they don't get it. And they're like, what you talking about? Like, what you're talking about is nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they just don't get it. But I mean, it's okay because I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. Like I'm at peace with this because I've taken the precautions, the steps that I need to take to manage myself and be okay with it. And the only thing that I was really hard on myself about was the fact that um I didn't know, like, did my illness like prevent me from being a good parent?
Mm-hmm.
I had to I took my son to therapy because of it. Because I felt like I needed confirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes anxiety will tell you these things, these negative things.
That
So,
aren't really true.
right, right. So I, in my mind, was thinking I was kind of like a jacked up parent because of this. And like, he's in the therapist's office, like, oh yeah, like, you were a good parent. Like, you raised me right. And it's like, that was the confirmation I needed to, like, I could I could exhale, like, okay, I'm good. Like, because now that I know he's okay, I can continue on with what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the important thing here is letting people know that this is a serious situation and that they need, if they need help, that they can get help. They don't have to, like, you don't have to suffer.
Mm-mm.
You don't have to. It is
But
not. Go ahead.
okay. What was I gonna say? Oh, I think a big part of that too, which is why when I do my videos or whatever it is that I do, even if I'm talking to somebody face to face, I try and be very honest and open about my history, because I don't think it's very helpful to stand in front of people or to show your face and only tell part of your story, because then I feel like people can't really relate, because there's always something else going on that somebody doesn't want to talk about.
Right.
They only feel so comfortable with saying so much. But I feel like if you're completely honest, if I show you all of my ugly and me getting through that, then you'll know you're not the only person who has made mistakes. You're not the only person who went and did that. And I got through it. And for me, my biggest thing was um, one where at least my bipolar anyway started to really become present, obvious, even though I didn't know it at the time, but going through therapy and revisiting and looking back, like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It started about 16. When I was about 16 years old, I was at the end of my junior year, and I don't know what happened. Something in me just snapped. And I started having a lot of sexual relationships with a lot of different people. And back then, I thought it was just me being in control, me getting what I wanted from different people, because I grew up around a whole bunch of women. My dad went through women like toilet tissue, and he even at some point was a pimp. So me and my sister, we saw a lot of different women in and out of the house. Oftentimes, he would send them out to do whatever, and that's how our bills got paid, because he would collect from them.
Wow.
And growing up, I knew that was wrong, but something inside it stuck. And I saw, okay, these women are using what they got to go and get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the attitude I had when I was 16 and 17 years old. I had rules. This was a 3-time deal and it was over. I don't have time to catch feelings for you. You can't know where I live. No, you cannot meet my family, and I need to get something in return. So, and this stays hush hush. And it would always be with someone who lived nowhere near where I lived at, to minimize the chance of people knowing about it. Because
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in my mind, I knew this was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But that was for a long time. That was something I didn't want to tell people. I mean, you're 16 and 17 years old and you have this high level of promiscuity. That's nothing to be proud of. It's not something you want to talk about to people. But what I didn't know was hypersexuality was a part of bipolar, because I felt like I just needed it all the time.
And you know what? I'm sorry. I just wanted to say this before I forgot. Um, I was always like in relationships, like ever since I can remember. Like I've always been like a relationship kind of person. But what I do remember is that I've never been like, going back to what you were saying about the hypersexuality, I've never been faithful in any of my relationships. So that was like a light bulb that flicked on for me. I
Mm-hmm.
would say maybe about a year ago, and I'm like, okay, so I get it now. It wasn't that I like there was a reason why I was doing this. Like that was the hypersexuality showing itself. Like all of these relationships I was in, you know, and I wasn't I wasn't faithful in any one of them. You know what I mean? So yeah, that it's a big thing. You know.
Yeah, and it's hard for a lot of people to understand, especially if they're on the other side of things. Like for you in a relationship, I can imagine how difficult it had to be if any of them knew
Right.
um, that this is what was going on. Because I mean, when you're on the other side of things, you don't want to hear that. Like, oh, you're just making excuses. Like they're just
Right.
seeing the act of it. They're not seeing the why.
Right.
I feel like if it were me, I would have a hard time seeing that. If it were my husband just going out,
Right.
different for women too, because that's not okay for us. You know, men,
Exactly.
men get patted on the back for different things like that. For us, we're automatically a hoe. And
Right.
that was the biggest thing for me, why I was so afraid to tell people about it or for people to find out, because of that label. But I think I turned like 19, and I took a look in the mirror while I was in college. And once again, I just had one of those light bulbs, this epiphany, like, what are you doing?
Right.
This isn't what you are. Why are you doing this? You don't need to do this. And it was a mix of, some PTSD from some abuse in the past, me watching me living in certain lifestyles, low self-esteem. It was a nice cocktail of a bunch of ugly.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to tell myself, this isn't okay. But, because there's always a but,
Mm-hmm.
even that part stopped, others didn't. Then I just started becoming really reckless. I would drive on a highway and wait until the very last minute to drive across to get off at the exit, cutting people off, almost getting into accidents.
Oh my gosh, I would do stuff like that too. And I'm like, I would do stuff like that. I totally would do like the road rage was completely out. Like not just road rage, it was road rage times 50. Like
Yeah,
get so upset that I would want to like hurt like if the person like, cut me off or did like I would want to hurt the person.
I completely understand. I still battle with that sometimes, and I have to, okay, it's not
Hmm.
that serious, Shenika. Or even when I don't come to grips, my husband will say, it's okay. It's not that deep. They are doing a speed limit, just little things like that. But I forgot what I was gonna say. My mind is all over the place. There we go. My mind is all over. Being on top of having a bipolar, the ADD has been very difficult too. Those two don't mix well together at all, because I'm already going through these ups and downs, these changes, and on top of that, I have a very short attention span. I can't remember what I'm gonna say half the time. I am set to do something. I'm on my way to do something. My mind takes me somewhere else. I leave that. I go do a third thing. And by the end of the day, I've done 20 different things and none of them are complete. My job, it makes it extremely difficult because I have to multitask. I have sticky notes and reminders on my Outlook and everything to help me remember. I have alarms on my phone because I forget to take my medication. Even little simple things like some time ago, I had packed a diaper bag for my daughter, because my younger two go to daycare all day.
Hmm.
She didn't have any more diapers. So I packed a bag with diapers, with some wipes, everything. Somehow, even though the stuff was sitting right next to my purse, I left it there. I left my phone. I didn't realize it until I got all the way to the daycare. I couldn't turn around and get the stuff because it was like 30 minutes away and I was already running late for work. But I felt so terrible. And I'm just like, how can I be so stupid? Like, why does this type of stuff keep happening? And I still battle with that. But on top of that, that was something that I shared on my page when it happened because I wanted other people to see. You have these kinds of moments, but you can't beat yourself up about it.
Absolutely.
And acceptance is accepting, hey, I'm going to forget stuff sometimes, but what can I do about it? And that's where the alarms came in, and the sticky notes and the Outlook messages, Outlook reminders, and all of that. This is me taking control of this. I know this is what it is. I know this is a downfall. What am I going to do about it? That's really what I've been trying to push.
I think that is a really good point because I can be forgetful at times, and sometimes I feel like I can be absent-minded, and that's why I'm a list person, and I'm a note, like I like to physically write things down, so I walk around with like a small calendar. And it's just about knowing what works for you.
Mm.
I think at the end of the day, it's like you need to figure out what's going to work for you. And like you said, things are going to happen. Things are going to happen. But when you figure out what is the solution to that problem, it's okay because things are always going to happen. It's not, don't beat yourself up about it. Just have a plan in place so that when it does happen, you're prepared. And I think that that was one of the things that has really saved me because I used to try to keep everything in my mind. The bills that I have to pay,
Yes.
dates that I'm supposed to, like outings that I'm supposed to go on with people. I used to really try to keep everything in my mind. And then I realized like this is not working. You need to get a calendar that you could write everything down. So now I have my calendar and I go nowhere without it. So, and it's one less stress that I have to deal with
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
I feel terrible, when I make plans with somebody and I don't remember because it was all up in here. So it's just figuring out what works for you.
Yeah, I was just talking to my mom the other day because she's been learning that she has different health issues. She wants to lose weight and different things. And she was telling me that she was getting frustrated because she wants everything to happen right now. Like, I've stopped eating certain foods, I've been getting up, I've been doing this, I've been doing that, and nothing is happening. And my thing for her, and I don't know where this came from, I really need to apply this to my life, but I said, Mom, stop looking at the long term. You know it's not going to happen overnight. Just take things one day at a time. And I said, what you can do, because sometimes it takes visual, you have to see what your progress is instead of just knowing this is what I need to do. I said, get a dry erase board. And some of the dry erase boards have like the days already on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, don't focus on what it is that you want to get accomplished for the day because you're going to disappoint yourself. There's going to be days where you don't get things done or meet that goal that you want to meet. Say your goal is to walk around the block once. If you only walk halfway around the block, you're going to be disappointed in yourself. You see walk around the block on the board. I said, what you should do is write down what you accomplished. I walked halfway around the block today. The next day, I didn't eat this food. The next day, I got up and vacuumed my floor and walked up and down the stairs. And over time, you'll see progression. You'll see I started here I am 2 weeks later, and now I'm doing this every day.
Right.
That would be more helpful for you than to focus on the things that you didn't get done.
Right.
And that can apply to so many things for so many people because especially when we have different mental health disorders, we have a hard time not only accepting what it is, when we do accept it, we just beat ourselves up because of the things that don't happen the way they're supposed to happen, or you get sunken down low. So one of my messages have been, if you're having a down day, celebrate that you got up and got out the bed. Celebrate that you got in the shower, washed your hair, that you brushed your teeth, you put on matching clothes today. Oh, you took an extra step and ironed them too? Congratulations.
Right. Celebrate every win, even if they are small.
Yep. And
Every,
that sounds silly, but when time goes on and you're no longer thinking and fighting to do those smaller things, and you're functioning more on a more normal level, you look back like, this is what got me here. This really worked. It sounded crazy at first, but now I'm here. So I have a whole bunch of different things that go on in my mind, like, oh, I should do this, and oh, I should say that, and this is a great idea. And if
mm-hmm.
I'm down, they disappear. But I don't know, that's why I get so excited about what I do, because I just want people, especially in our community, to start seeing this is okay. This is who we are. It's no different than having high blood pressure, heart disease, high cholesterol, any of that that's prevalent in our community.
Because the
This
brain is an organ. It's a brain. It's a malfunction of the brain. That's it. And I think maybe if it's said like that, maybe people would understand. There is a malfunction. There's something going on in the brain.
I think
Um,
that's the root of the problem. It's something that you can't see.
right. Absolutely. But I mean, I guess when people have high blood pressure, can you see that?
You can see the end result of it: the dizziness,
Yeah, yeah,
the you're out, your head hurts, or whatever.
right.
With
Yeah,
that,
yeah. I guess you're right. So, I don't want to hold you too much longer. So, I think this was so awesome. This was so great. This was so great. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk.
me too.
I'm so glad. So, what do you want to share as like your parting words? What do you want people to know?
Um, what I always try and get people to see is that uh, it, uh, different people have different belief systems. But if you're a religious person at all, you know that some higher being put you here for a purpose, and each individual person came here different. There's no one who is completely the same. Or if you don't believe in that, just, the evolution wise, we were all evolved to be different. And because of that, it's nothing wrong with accepting the differences in you and the person sitting right next to you. And that difference may very well be, I have a mental disorder, they don't. I decided to go there, they didn't. Your focus has to be on you, because you can't do anything for anyone else if you're broken. You're broken, and there's pieces of you scattered everywhere, and you're allowing everybody to come and pick up those little pieces. You'll never get to put yourself back together because people have those pieces of you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to take them back. You got to get some glue and start gluing little piece by piece, and take it piece by piece, because you're not going to get better overnight. Your life isn't going to completely change overnight, but you have to accept the fact that you are human and that your life matters just as much as everyone else. You keep that in mind. You wake up every day, you say, I am worth it. Even if you don't feel it, each day that you say that, you will start to believe it a little more and a little more and a little more. And you'll also start to see other people and things they struggle with. And you'll say, I'm not so jacked up after all. This person got that going on. That person's getting a divorce. That
Right.
person's car just broke down yesterday. My life isn't as bad as I thought it was. And that sounds terrible, because it kind of seems like you're celebrating over other people's anguish. But looking at it from a different way, you see that people that you thought may have had it all together, they don't. I work with a bunch of people who, from the outside, they look like they have the perfect life. They have the excellent salary, they drive the nice cars, they live in a wonderful house. But then you hear them come to work and talk about marital problems. Their kids are doing this. This kid OD because they got on this drug. This person is getting kicked out of school. And you think, this person's life isn't so perfect after all. So I can talk forever, but the end message is stop being so hard on yourself, because if you look around, you'll see that everybody has something going on. And they're not beating themselves up about it. They're carrying on day to day. They're holding their heads up high. So why shouldn't you? Even in your misery, at your low points, even if you are at your lowest, there's no point in looking at the ground. You're already there. Look
Right.
up.
Right. No place to go but up. Okay, so I think that was a great takeaway. So you want to give your YouTube channel before we go? Yes.
My YouTube channel is the same as my Instagram name. What's wrong with Shenika? The link is in my bio if anyone wants to go and check it out. I do stuff on my Instagram and on my YouTube. And I guess one day I'll have like an actual blog page up. I'm not sure. But check me out.
And I'll
Follow.
put the link. I'll put the link. I'm gonna upload this and then I'll link your pages to this video.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. And everybody who does eventually watch this video, thank you for watching.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So we got to do this again, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much to Shenika. So I just wanted to just come back on and say, yeah, so there's nothing wrong with accepting your diagnosis. I think it is a beautiful thing when you can accept your diagnosis. And thank you again for watching. We had a little morning tea today. This is Andrian from Beautiful Brain Collective. Check me out on Instagram, Beautiful Brain Collective, and on the website, beautifulbraincollective.com. And join me again for morning tea. Thank you.